Oh my goodness. Here we are. It's 2 p.m. I'm right on time. You're right on time. If you're dropping in here, just let me know. Let me know who you are, where you're coming in from. We're going to have some fun today. So, you're going to find out what it looked like to be an introvert live on YouTube and answer questions and talk about some updates. As many of you know, sometimes I do these live shows. I don't do them a ton, and I'm also not. I'm not like a big like news guy. But today is we're going to do that because there's actually some really, really big news in the dirt bike world, especially in the off-road enduro world. So let me know if you can hear what I'm saying. I believe I've got everything set up correctly as far as my deal here. But sometimes things get a little funky, but I think we're good. So let me know in the comments if you can hear me okay, and where you're coming from. So we've got Caleb jumping in here. Jay's ripping. Jay's ripping says loud and clear. JC says, I hear you. Sound is clear. So a lot of people, even my sister's on here. We got Kim coming in. She says, yep. So yeah, some big updates today with the KTM lineup. So a little bit of a background. KTM changed their two-stroke line to TPI, which is a throttle transfer port injection, is what I should say. They rolled this out in like 2018 and 2019, and there's most of the bikes ran really, really well, but there's always been people who complained because it was oil injected, and there was a couple people that had their oil pumps fail, and everyone freaked out. I've owned like 20 of them, and I've never had a single problem. In fact, none of my friends have even had a problem with them. But the point is, it has happened, and how things spread. Anyway, well, KTM is constantly updating things and changing things, and there had been rumors for a year or two that they were going to drop their TPI, their transfer port injection with the two strokes, and change it over to a throttle body injection, which we're dubbing TBI. So moving from TPI to TBI. That was kind of what was known. Also, one of the things KTM does is they kind of like make their big changes in their motocross line. So if you've noticed, like Cooper Webb and in Supercross has had a little bit of a hard time this year, hard time getting used to the bike. They kind of make their big updates with the motocross line, and then usually the XC bike gets those same changes in that same year. I don't know if my camera is too low here. I might need to adjust this just a smidge. That might be a little better. Anyway, so they adjust, or they will make the same changes to the XC bike, the XC line, as they did to their SX line in that year. And then usually the XCW will get it the year after. Well, here's the thing. The updates that we have in this 2023 bike are the most updates I have ever seen from KTM. I've been paying attention to this for 10 years. I've watched it for a decade. Since 2012, I've been paying pretty close attention to what happens with their lineup. And the only thing that changed, the only thing that even compares to this was in 2017 when they changed to a counterbalance motor. They changed the position of the starter on that motor. It's a whole new motor. And then they went to the air fork in 2018. The changes that they're making here are more. There's more changes to their 2023 lineup as far as in the SX lineup and in the XC lineup. I'm going to talk mostly about the XC lineup here. That's what we're talking about today. And these are 2023 models. So let me give you this. So the biggest things, like I'm just going to read off my notes here. I took all this off the website. And so be gentle with me in the future if some of this stuff changes, because KTM has been notorious in the past for having false information on their website. The guys that are designing the bikes are not the same guys that are actually doing the website. I know that because I've seen mistakes in the past. But anyway, here's some of the things. You've got a brand new, totally updated frame. You've got an injection system that changed from TPI over to TBI. You've got the oil system that changed because it's going to be a premix bike. These XC bikes are no longer going to have an oil pump. They won't have an oil reservoir inside. You will be pre-mixing the fuel with oil. So a lot of racers, desert racers, people are going to be happy about that because that makes the bike simpler, less failure points. It's a totally new transmission, which we're going to get into. It's a new swing arm. They've redesigned the foot pegs and moved them in closer. There's an updated crankshaft. There's an updated power valve or exhaust control. There's a new throttle body. There's a water temperature sensor. It's an all new engine, all new. All new. There's a new pipe design for better ground clearance. There's a new silencer. There's new wheels. There's a new swing arm. I think I already said a new axle. Excuse me. Updated finger clickers on the rear shock for high speed and low speed. There's grab handles on the bike. There's a new fuel tank with a threaded fuel filter. There's an updated fuel filter line or fuel line. There's a new stop start switch. There's a new stator. Holy crap. Like about the only thing that I can tell that is going to, carry over from the 22s to the 23s is the handlebars and probably the brakes. Your brake lever, your clutch lever, those probably are going to be the same because I believe there's still going to be Brembo controls. But other than that, like everything is changing. It's insane. You look at the website, ktm.com, you go over there and you look at what they're changing, and like, if you've paid it, like they don't even have, they're just like showing like, boom, boom, boom. Here's some things. They don't even have, at least I don't get the press release. KTM doesn't know I exist, apparently, or I'm not press or whatever, but there's a ton of changes. Now, let me tell you something. I'm not happy about all the changes, especially one change that I'm really, really disappointed with, or a couple changes that I'm really disappointed with. At the same time, though, they are making a lot of other changes. And so I'm willing to wait and see how all this plays out. I've already had text messages from people. I've had calls from people. I have had emails from people that are pissed off because of this, that, or the other. And before I get into that, I want to just mention that they snuck in a 300 SX as well. So if you're into motocross, two-stroke motocross bikes, they always had the 250 SX. Now that 250 SX is no longer carbureted. It's fuel injected. Just like the 250 and the 300 XC that we'll be talking about, and the 125 XC as well, which I'm not going to talk a ton about the 125 XC. I mostly have updates on the 250 XC and the 350 XC. You like how I do that? That's a 250, and that's a 350, 300. My goodness. Anyway, so they snuck into 300 SX as well, which they'd never had before. Here's the main thing that I'm kind of pissed off is maybe an appropriate word. And they just kind of like snuck this one in there. They're dropping the at least according to the website right now, they're dropping the 6-speed transmission on the 250 XC and the 300 XC bikes. As you know, the 250 XC for the last many, many years has been my favorite bike, hands down. Of all the bikes that I've ridden, if you made me pick one bike to ride all year long, it would have been the 250 XC. Still is in 2022. I have one. I got to ride it last week. I think I'm going to go ride again, maybe tomorrow or the next day. That's been my favorite bike. And part of the reason is because I have felt that semi-close ratio 6-speed transmission that was only available on the KTM XC line is literally the best transmission in all of dirt bikes. It's the most versatile. You can do moto with it. You can do hard enduro with it. You can do trails with it. It can do anything. And it appears, at least at first glance, that they're dropping that transmission, and I think just going with the SX 5-speed transmission. It's one of the reasons I don't like the Honda CRF 450 and 250 RX that I have right now, because it's just got the 5-speed transmission. I like that the semi-wide ratio transmission with the 6-speed for connecting trails and things like that. And it looks like we're dropping that. I think probably the reason why they're dropping that is to simplify the production line. You can say cut costs, you can cut costs, simplify the production line, whatever. I think that's what they're doing because they have so many different models. If you think about it, KTM has more models of dirt bikes than any other manufacturer. And it's kind of not even close, especially because they've got the motocross line, they've got the enduro line, you've got the XC line, you've got the XCW line, you even have the EXC line. And the XC that we have here in the US is really kind of only US and Canada. There might be a couple other places that have it. But I think what they're trying, especially now, because they have the Husqvarna line and the gas line, I think what they're trying to do is just simplify the production lines a little bit to make it so there's not so many different weird things. That sucks for us as consumers, because it's my favorite thing about the XC is the 6-speed XC semi-close ratio transmission. I love it because the gears were evenly spaced between all 6 gears. You don't get evenly spaced gears on the XCW. And so they were either going to go with the XCW transmission, I would guess, or go with the 5-speed SX, the motocross gearing, and they went with the motocross gearing. We'll just have to see how that goes. The problem is going to be for like hard enduro type stuff. Now your first gear is going to be actually quite high. And we might end up having to change gearing. Like, I'm not a super fan of changing gearing, like as far as like different sprocket sizes. I've always ended up kind of back at the baseline, the stock baseline. But on this, might have to change, might have to go a tooth bigger in the rear or 2 teeth bigger in the rear and just play around with that. I do have one on order, a 250XC 2023 model. It probably won't be here until October or November of this year, but I do have that coming. Here's another thing that they're changing. And this one I'm going to wait and see where they are actually, no, before I get to that one, they dropped the oil injection. I'm totally fine with that. On this bike, it's going to be a Premix bike. So you will not have you will not have an oil pump injecting oil into the throttle body like we've had in the past on the TPI bikes. I'm totally fine with that. Like, because there's a lot of people that moved away and stayed away from the KTM fuel injected bikes because they were scared about that oil pump failing. Now, again, I have hundreds of hours between my bikes and my friends' bikes, more than 2,000, probably 3,000 hours, and never a single hiccup with that. But there have been some people that had their oil pumps fail. And if your oil pump fails, bam, your bike is going to be burned down within just a little bit. So on the XC bikes and the SX bikes, you do not have that problem. So it's kind of alleviating one of the reasons why some of the people stayed away from these KTM fuel injected 2-strokes, because now they're simplifying that process where you're mixing the oil and the fuel. You don't have to worry about your oil pump going. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. And they'll still, at least on the 2023 XCW bikes, they'll still have the oil injection. It'll still be TPI on those bikes. The XCWs, from what I can tell, aren't going to get these updates until 2024 model year on the XCWs, which is pretty typical. Another thing that they're changing, and this is one where I think we're just going to have to wait and see, is the power valve, or it's going to come with an electronic power valve or exhaust control. Typically, from what I can tell, those things are not readily adjustable by consumers, by us. In the past, we've had that power valve on the side of the motor that you could change, that you could turn with a key, a little square key or whatever. You could adjust that. That appears to be going away. I know Honda did an electronic power valve on their like CR250 back in 2000, 2002, 2003, somewhere in there, with mixed results. But, KTM usually gets the motor things right. So we'll just have to see. Like, I know there's a bunch of people piling on saying, oh, I won't be able to adjust that anymore. Well, it's like, we aren't really able to adjust our jetting either, but for the most part, they've been very good. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. Here's something that I'm not excited about. On the subframe, they're going to a 2-piece subframe where the bottom part is going to be aluminum coming right off your frame, and then the top part is a composite / plastic part of the subframe. It's kind of what a hybrid of what Husqvarna has been using for the last many years. I don't love it. But again, I think what they're doing is trying to simplify the production lines off of these 3 different brands, KTM, Husky, Gas. And they're like, hey, why don't we've got aluminum subframe on one bike and we've got composite subframe on the other bike. Why don't we just like have them go sit in a warehouse together, the aluminum and the plastic, and just see what happens and see what comes out. And what we have is a baby from the 2, and it's a 2-piece subframe. I don't know, not super crazy about that, but it may not be the biggest thing in the world. It appears that these bikes might be around maybe 3 pounds lighter. And that would be because we're dropping the oil injection stuff, I would presume. Let's talk about the frame. So it's an entirely updated frame. Like, everything is new. It's got thicker walls. It appears to have like different, like maybe a little bit more narrow where the foot pegs come in. One of the big things that they're touting about this frame is that it's a mass centralization thing. And we've seen this quite a bit over various manufacturers over, I would say, maybe even the last 10 years. one of the first ones that did it was Yamaha back in 2010 when they turned their motor around to kind of centralize the mass of that motor. You've maybe noticed that on the Yamaha 4-strokes where the motor tilts backwards where everyone else's motors tilt frontwards. So that's another thing KTM is doing, is trying to get their, kind of like move the center of mass towards the center of the bike. And that's probably for a balance thing. And we'll have to see how that goes. Hasn't gone that well for Cooper Webb and Supercross. There's probably a lot of other things going on too, but I mean, Cooper Webb hasn't been able to gel. He didn't gel with that bike very well here in this with the new bike, because that's what Cooper Webb and Marvin Muscan and Aaron Plessinger, those guys would have been. Excuse me, those guys would have been riding this new frame that we're now going to get on these 2023 bikes. So let's see, moving right along. Oh, here's something that I think is going to be awesome. There's a grab handle by the Airbox. I've been complaining about the rear fender design on these bikes. It'll be interesting to see. I've been complaining about it for a long time. The way that it's been designed, I felt like they went backwards. They probably redesigned the whole fender, and they have like a little grab handle now that's going to be, it's right above, I guess you'll be able to reach it with your left hand. If you're standing on the right hand side of the bike, you'd reach over and you'd be able to grab the grab handle. I'm not sure if it's on the other side. I'm not sure if it's also on the right hand side of the bike. I hope it is. I didn't look that closely at all the pictures, so maybe it's there, and that would be great. But either way, even one grab handle, I'll take one grab handle. That's a step in the right direction, and hopefully we have two. They're also touting a new swing arm that's like, a hollow swing arm with like different ways that they're forging it and all this stuff. They're talking about how it might make it so it grabs on less things, it hooks on less things. And that's been a little bit of an issue in the past. It'll be interesting to see if they've addressed where the chain guide hooks on, because what we've been having to do is install like these little guards. Bulletproof Designs makes one. Maybe some others make it too. I've just been buying the Bulletproof Designs ones where you put a little guard on there to protect your chain guard tabs from getting ripped off. So it'll be interesting to see if they've addressed that along with this new swing arm. They've also said that they're giving us a new axle on the rear end. I think they're calling it like a 22 millimeter axle there to kind of like counterbalance with the rest of the bike. It's an entirely new motor. So, I mean, it's hard to just mention, it's hard to just gloss over that, but it looks like it's an entirely new motor with a new cylinder. And I mean, the power valve has changed. It looks like they've changed the case of the motor. Like, so much has changed. Like I'm telling you, it's the biggest changes that I've seen. Like, you add it all up and it's just monumental. This bike is totally new. When a lot of manufacturers will come out with an all new bike every 2, 3, 4 years or whatever, and it's just some minor updates. This doesn't appear to me to be minor updates. This appears to be a wholesale change of the entire motorcycle. They've talked about the foot pegs, where they've maybe a little bit wider foot pegs but higher ground clearance on the foot pegs, and then moved them in, which I think is really cool. Then they're saying that you're not going to hit rocks and roots as much. It's amazing how much like a quarter of an inch can make a difference, where if your foot pegs are just a little bit lower or whatever, you can hit your foot pegs on a lot of stuff. And hopefully we won't be hitting foot pegs as much. We'll just have to kind of see. And then if your feet are closer in, I don't know. I like bikes getting more narrow. I think it's a step in the right direction. We'll just kind of have to see how it all plays out with the new frame and where the foot pegs are positioned on that frame, which is interesting. Next thing, and sorry, I'm just ripping these things off, and then we can try to go through and get some of the questions. Let's see. Next thing is a new throttle body. They've got a new throttle body. I think it's from Kian. Don't quote me on that. There's so many new things, but a new throttle body. And I did notice that they have adjusters on that throttle body on the top and the bottom. So I'm guessing one of those is going to be for our idle adjustment. What the other one is for, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it'll be kind of like to change the screw or something like that, to maybe change the mix on the low RPM, kind of like what you would have on a typical carbureted 2-stroke bike. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. There's a new reed case. They're getting some parts from a company called Vitesco. I'm not super familiar with them. but there's some parts down there from Vitesco, like a new reed case. They're putting a visible water temperature sensor on the bike somewhere down on one of the radiator hoses. I'm not exactly sure where that is, but it's, I'm just digging through their site and looking at this stuff. As we pretty much suspected, the option to have a kickstart is gone. Okay. So I've been complaining about that forever, and it is gone. It's just like the 4-strokes. There is no way to add a kickstart onto these bikes. We lost that battle. They are definitely wanting to just simplify things and make things lighter. It's a race to the bottom. It's a race to the bottom on weight and complexity. And that just went away. They're just like, they kind of slowly weaned us off of it. I'm not happy about it. I know a lot of you are not happy about it, but then there's the other side that says, well, how often have you been stranded out there because you didn't have a kickstart? And my answer is, I have not ever been stranded because I didn't have a kickstart. The one time that I was stranded, I did have a kickstart on the bike and I still couldn't get the thing to start because I was an idiot and I had a blown fuse and I couldn't identify the fuse. It didn't look like it was blown to me, and I didn't actually check it with a new fuse, which the fuses were there in the bike, and blah, 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 blah. Long story. Point is, I've never been stranded without having a kickstart. There are some remedies and some things that you can do to kind of mitigate the risk of this. You can install like a better battery. They do come with a lithium ion battery. You can put even a better battery like an anti-gravity restart battery in the bike. You can put a backup electric start switch. These XCs, at least in the past, have already had capacitors, so they will bump start even on a dead battery on the XC bikes. On the XCW bikes, you had to install a capacitor. But this bike, yeah, I'm not happy about the kickstart going away, but at a certain point, I've just got to shut up because I've been talking about it and complaining about it for years. They don't care. They don't care what I say. They don't care what you say. They're literally just doing what everyone else is doing. And every single manufacturer has been taking the kickstarts off. And I think they're all going to go. Anyone who still has a kickstart, it's going to be gone in a little bit. So we're just going to have to, there's nothing we can do. Other things that they're talking about, updated brackets for the skid plates, which is nice. It's always been kind of janky. I don't know if that's a good word to use. I don't even know what that means. Janky. It's always been kind of frustrating to get some of the skid plates to install on these things. So they're talking about updated brackets where you can bolt skid plates on a little bit easier. That should be nice. We'll just kind of have to see. They're going with totally different rims, wheels. They're giant wheels. In the past, they went with, it just escapes me. You had some Excel wheels. I think they were Excel before. Anyway, had a couple different things. Now they're going with wheels from Giant, and they've even redesigned the spoke nipples. I'm not exactly sure what that means. They're saying like maybe they won't have to be, checked as often, like they won't come loose as often, but that's something. We talked about the swing arm already. The air fork it's still an air fork on the front. Obviously they're updating the valving, and they're all every year, every manufacturer changes like valving or whatever in their fork and their shock. So that's not super noteworthy other than to say, yes, they updated that. Here's something though that is new. And they have finger clickers on the forks. They're WP forks, which I don't know why everyone doesn't do finger clickers. It boggles my mind, but WP/KTM here has doubled down, and the rear shock on the bike, for the first time I have ever seen, they have a finger clicker on the low speed and a finger clicker on the high speed. So you're now adjusting your rear shock on the bike without any tools, which I think is genius. And I don't know why KYB and Showa don't follow suit. Give me one good reason why we don't have finger clickers. And if you tell me like, oh, it can get broken off, I'm like, dude, if it gets broken off, then oh well. You know what I mean? Like the chances of you breaking off those finger clickers are actually not very high, but the usability and the utility of being able to just reach down there and go a click one way or the other, I think that's awesome. And I'm super glad that I've got it. As near as I can tell, it's still a Brembo clutch and Brembo brakes. Which is nice. I think they're the best brakes in the industry. They're not telling us that they're changing anything. They do call out that they have a Brembo clutch. They don't really say much. At least I didn't see on the website if they're changing, if it's a Brembo brake, but I don't know why they would change that. They're also talking about this is an interesting one as far as like body and ergonomics. They're talking about an improved rider triangle for better contact with the bike when you're standing, which is kind of cool because if you think about it, then that means that they realize that people are standing a lot. Like in motocross, you're not standing as much. Typically, there's a lot of sitting and stuff. Obviously, you stand in motocross, but there's more sitting in motocross. When I'm riding these off-road enduro bikes, I'm standing between 90 and 95% of the time. And so if they're then doing something to try to increase the contact points or just give a better way to grip the bike back there with the way that the frame and the plastic is, I think I'm okay with that. I'm interested to see that how that happens. We already talked about the grab handle under the seat, right above the air box, which is pretty cool. It's getting a new fuel tank. It's still see-through, like translucent, so you can still kind of see what your fuel is doing. They're talking about a thread on fuel cap, which was kind of a big complaint. Well, some of a complaint with some people because they had like a push, like there was like a button that you pushed on it and then it would turn like 1/8 of a turn or whatever. Now they're saying it's going to be a threaded fuel cap, which is maybe just going to make it simpler. There is a map switch on the handlebar. Husky has had that for a while where you have map 1 and map 2. I haven't yet seen a 2-stroke where I thought, the different maps were a big deal because every one that I've tried, I always felt like one map was, the hot map, and that's the way the bike was supposed to run. And then if you switch to the other map, whether we're calling it map 1 or map 2, I'll just say the mellow map. The mellow map I've always felt like ran kind of like doggy and like crap. So there's that, but it does have a map switch. There is also an updated like stop and start switch, like your start switch. It appears that the start switch and the stop switch is on the same side, which is going to take some getting used to. We'll just kind of have to see how that goes. Also, they're saying that they've got an X-ring chain on the bike. I don't know that they had that before. I think the chains in the past were O-ring chains. X-ring chain is an even a little bit better chain. And for me, that's nice. I mean, KTM has always put nice chains on these enduro and off-road bikes, which is cool because you notice it when you buy something like the Kawasaki that I bought last year. I bought a 2021 KX250X, and that bike had a shiz chain that I ended up having to change after like the third ride because it wasn't an O-ring chain and it just kept stretching. And so it's nice that KTM is putting like a better chain on there. Just a couple other things. They have their 125XC, which did gain weight because it now has fuel injection on that. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And that's pretty much what I had prepared to kind of just run down through the things, which it's been about 26, 27 minutes on that. How long we've been going here? Yeah, 27.5 minutes. So now there's been like a million comments in here, and I'm just going to try to go through and see if there's some questions. Yeah, Hunter McLeod says 6 days have the map switches. Yes, that's true. And it hasn't been like a great thing for me as far as map switches. I've never really cared. Because people talk about map switches and they say, well, once you get tired, you can just switch to the cooler map or whatever. And I'm just like, if I get tired, I just like use a little bit better throttle control. I'm not the guy that's like switching maps all the time based off the terrain or whatever. So yeah. Somebody in here said it's not a grab handle. Well, they're saying on the website that it's a grab handle. So we'll have to agree to disagree on that because they are calling a brand a grab handle. Kevin Ryan says Kyle Brotherson, but he spelled my name wrong. He used an O-N. He said Kyle Brotherson for president 2024. Kevin, I have zero interest in politics. Ricochet says, got here late. What did I miss? You missed a lot. Sorry. Let's see what else we have. Oh, so Datsun says 5-speed is lame. I don't believe the hype of less is better. I'm with you. I'm not excited about the 5-speed. It's the worst thing about this bike. There's a lot to really like here, or there's a lot to at least, wait and see, because there's a shiz ton of changes on this. But I'll tell you, that was really disappointing to me. Extremely disappointing. And I'm looking straight at the camera and I'm saying, KTM, you're probably doing it to save cost or to simplify your production line, but listen to the sound of my voice. That is a shit decision. Sorry, I shouldn't swear, but I don't like that decision and I am not happy about it. But hey, look, they have never listened to me before. Never once. Never once. KTM has never I shouldn't speak in absolutes. They don't listen to me, and they don't listen to a lot of, I mean, they're listening to somebody, obviously. I just don't know who they're listening to. Yeah. So what other questions? Drop your questions down in here. Let's see. Okay. Oh, here's a good question. So JC Racing says, do you think the XEW is going to follow the XC changes? I do. Typically what happens, JC, and we'll wait and see, is typically the XEW gets these updates the following model year. So if they stay with the same pattern that they've done in the past, then the XCW will get most, if not all of these changes next year in 2024. I don't think they'll get, excuse me, I don't think they'll change the transmission on the XCW. I think it'll still stay the wide ratio transmission. And I can also see them, moving the frame, doing the frame changes and some of that stuff. I could see them possibly going away from PDS altogether. Because if you think about it, they, the PDS, which is the way the shock hits, hooks to the rear, the linkage on the rear on the KTM XCW, it's the only one that has that now, other than the little bikes like the 65s and the 85s. But as far as the 125 and up, the XCW is the only one that has that swing arm. The Gas has linkage. The Husky has linkage. And so I could totally see them doing away with the PDS in 2024 altogether. I could see that happening. I could also see them keeping the oil injection on the XCWs, just so that they can have the best of both worlds. That way they can have the easy button for the people who don't want to have to mix gas. And it'd also be solving the racer problem, the people who are worried about, their oil pump going out or whatever. So they could have premix on the XC, and they could still stay with some form of oil injection on the XCWs. I could see that happening. Let's see. Oh, so here's another one. So it's J McKay 6-man. J McKay 6-man 1 says, still say KTM screwed the pooch when they got rid of their 200cc bikes. I'm with you. I mean, they don't make perfect decisions all the time. I also could see, I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped the 150 in 2024, the 150 XCW, and brought back a 200. That's what I would like to see. I don't think the 150 makes a whole lot of sense. I think a 200 makes more sense. Let's see. Dakota Corp says, do you ever think you'd review or have interest in the new XCW 150? I think they've changed the pipe back in 2020 to be more like a 200 cc. I mean, it's fine. My gut feeling is, Dakota, that they're not going, I don't think they're going to have the 150 around. I think the 125 is going to be the bike that they have in the 125 SX and the 125 XC. I think the 150 is going away. I don't know that, but it's just a gut feeling. They're asking about the price of the 2023s. Dude, with inflation, this stuff is insane. The bikes always go up by a couple $100. They are listing the KTM 300 XC as $11,099 plus $495 freight. These bikes are expensive. They're all expensive. I will say, because sometimes people say like, oh, the KTMs cost the most. Like, they're all expensive. The most expensive bike I've ever bought is a Sherco. I've never wrote a bigger check than I have for a Sherco. They're all bloody expenses. By the time you get out the door with taxes and everything, you're going to be writing $12,000 checks on these things. And inflation is making it even worse. We're having the most inflation that we've ever had. It's just a shiz show. Brandon Bladen says, Kyle, have you tried any Beta 250 or 300 RR models? Not the race edition. Yes, I have, but not recently. Let's see. Another question. Will the 125 SX be better or just more unnecessary updates like an electric start? Well, it depends on what your version of unnecessary. If you're going to do a 125 SX, it probably is unnecessary. But if you're going to trail ride on any of these bikes, electric start is, in my opinion, a necessary option. I'm just going to say it. Like, for me, I think electric start is necessary for the types of riding that I do and the places that I go. But if you were just riding moto, it is probably unnecessary. How much weight increase do you? So Dale Malone says, how much weight increase do you anticipate for the 125 XE due to the addition of fuel injection? So I'm thinking it's going to be somewhere between 5 to 8 pounds. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what my gut feeling says. If it's a race, bottom weight wise. Okay, here's a question. Kyle Turnbow. If it's a race to the bottom weight wise, wouldn't it be lighter to have a kickstart and no electric? I never use the electric start. Yes, it would, but they know they have analytics to say all the other bikes are going electric start. Everyone has gone that way. The market has demanded it. Even think about the motocross bikes. Even the motocross bikes, yeah, it is a little bit heavier to put a kick start on the things, but electric start is faster. It straight up is. And think about it. Some of these races, like desert races or GNCC races, they're like cold, they're like dead start races. It is 100% fast. Well, typically it's faster to hit the electric start button. Certainly if you stall the bike, in a ditch or something like that, or on the side of a mountain, an electric start is faster and it is more convenient and it does take less energy. Like if your bike doesn't start on the first kick and you have to kick it 2 or 3 times, now your heart rate is already spiked. Don't ask me how I know. It's happened to me. So Tavin says, my brother said that in 2024, KTM is dropping the XC 150 XCW and bringing back a 200. Tavin, I don't know who your brother is, but I hope that happens. I hope they do drop the 150 in 24 and bring back a 200. That would be awesome. Jake Garner says it's hard to find a price for the 2023 XCW around 11,099. Wouldn't surprise me if it changed. I think that's going to be about what it is. Let's see. Lost my place here. Just looking for some things. We already kind of covered the Kickstarter. What's your opinion? Okay. Little Seizures 0912. What's your opinion on the KTM 85 SX for woods and riding? Because I'm thinking about getting one. I'll tell you, both my boys are on KTM 85s and I love them. They're the best. They're the best kids bikes I've ever had my kids on, and they're both on them now. Let's see. Moving along. Blake Burton says, did you like your 150? So I had the 150 in 2017. I liked it. I didn't love it. It was okay. Let's see. Love my 2022. Yikes. Okay. So here's a good question. How is the XC any different than the SX now? Really good question. This is by D Fish. As near as I can tell, it's mostly different in valving. The XC will have softer valving. It will have an 18-inch rear wheel, and it will have a kickstand. It's also possible that it's going to have a larger fuel tank. I mean, let me just see here. If we go over to the MX model and we just say we're going to go to 2023 SX, So the XC will have a larger fuel tank as well. The SX bike is going to have a smaller fuel tank that's black. From what I can tell, it won't be translucent. So there are some differences, but there will be less distinction because of that transmission now than we've had in the past. Let's see. Daniel Herman says, reasoning behind the XE changes for 2023, but nothing new, except for the colors on the EXEs or the XEWs. Yes, this is how it's happened, Daniel. I've been watching it for 10 years, and this is the MO, the mode of operations that KTM does. They make their major updates to their motocross line, and the XC line has typically gotten those changes right at that same time, and then the XEW gets them the following year. And I think it's so that they can kind of use up some of the parts and stuff and roll things out on a slower basis. Yeah, somebody that says, yeah, the 5-speed change was dumb. Jamie Cahill says, don't buy a beta. They are soft. Betas are not soft. In fact, betas are harsh. No, they're not always harsh, but there's nothing wrong with a beta. Yeah, Kevin, who was it here? Kevin Doyle says 13,266 out the door for a Sherco factory edition in Washington. That's insane. Let's see. Next one. Enjoying. I bet the carb motocross will be lighter. I didn't realize. Just looking for some good questions here. At least questions that I kind of know the answer to. Yeah, so Brandon Bladen says electric start for what Kyle does is mandatory. You kill the bike in a bad spot and you'll wish you had it. Yes, Brandon, I agree with you 1,000,000%. I didn't think back in 2016, 2017, I didn't think electric start was mandatory for my riding, but what has happened since then is we just have gotten into nastier and nastier situations. And when you get into the nasty and you're hanging off the side of a mountain, and your bike is stalled and you're on the wrong side of it, electric start is bloody mandatory. Mic drop. Let's see. So Brad Gunther says, hey, Kyle, after saving for 2 years, I finally bought I finally bought my KTM 300 XCW. It's a 2013. I'm loving it, and your videos are awesome and incredible. Support from RSA. So thank you so much, Brad. Matt Gore says, I hope the YZ stays old school with a carb and a kickstart so you can choose EFI. I think it will, Matt. I don't think Yamaha is going to do anything to that sucker, which is good and bad. I can tell you why it's bad, and I can also tell you some good things, but I don't think they're going to change it. I was also talking to Pool says, will you be ordering one, Kyle? I already did. I ordered one a while ago, so it won't be here. It's a 250 XC. Probably won't be here until October, November. Joel Hurst says, hey, Kyle, will you ever try a TM Racing fuel injected 2-stroke instead of the Austrian brands? Yes, I will. I get enough questions about it. I will do that eventually. Ricochet says, these changes give me little seizures. There's a lot of changes, Ricochet. There's a lot of changes here, and some of them are good and some of them are bad, but we'll see. Jim McKay, or it's JJ McKay 6man1 says, I agree with Kyle. I'd love to see the 200s come back. Jake Garner says a kickstand. Yep. In fact, there might be some changes to the kickstand on these bikes. I'm not 100% sure. So Erno A says, what do you think about a sharp tank radiator shroud? It looks very pointy. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. We'll have to just see. Have you tried let's see. TJ says, have you tried the expensive electric modded bikes in the trails? Tons of people in Utah. No, I haven't tried them yet. I haven't tried the electric bikes out on the trails. Brandon Bladen says, did KTM announce anything about warranties? Beta offers a 6-month. I wondered if anything was mentioned. I haven't seen anything mentioned. In the past, it's been just a 30-day warranty. But if you've got a good dealer, I've also seen dealers really take care of people, even if it's past the warranty. It really kind of depends on your dealer. But I've never had a warranty issue. D-Fish says, I have the 2022 250XC now. Should I wait a few years to see how this stuff works out? I probably would, just because there's nothing wrong. Your 2022 250XC is an incredible bike. Do not let anyone tell you there's nothing wrong with your 22. Nothing wrong. I'm doing it because there's a bunch of changes on this, and this is kind of like my livelihood. But if you have low hours on your bike, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. So I would just hang on to it. Jordan Kazo says, is the map switch controlling the power valve? I do not know. I doubt it, but I don't know that. Let's see. Beta built motors for KTM. Surprised to see a new frame. Surprised not to see a new frame. That's interesting. So Andrew Holler is saying, surprised not to see a new frame on the 23s. Does this have anything to do with the criticism over the MX bikes? No, Andrew, they do have new frames. So the SX and the XC bikes have all new frames. The XCWs don't have that frame. Oh, here's another thing that I think is interesting to note. It appears that on the motocross bikes and the XC bikes, the frames are all the same with the same mounting points for the motors. And so you can swap, like if you had a 450 SX, the mounting points would be the same for a 250 SX. So you could change motors. And if you had like one of these enduro bikes, from what I think I've been told is if you had if you had a 300 XC, well, that's kind of always been the same. You could always change it over to a 250 XC, but you can change the motors because the mounting points, from what I'm told, are the same. Let's see. Other questions. So Neil has something interesting. Neil Peters says they have posted wrong information about the 5-speed and 6-speed time that they release a new chassis. Yes, I have seen times where they have had erroneous information on the website. So we'll just kind of have to see. Carson Godshall, I don't know how you pronounce it. Look at the 125 SX transmission on the website. Yes, the 125s do still say that they have a 6-speed, both on the 125 XC and the 125 SX. Both are listing 6 speeds on the transmissions, but on the 250 SX, the 300 SX, the 250 XC, and the 300 XC, they're listing a 5-speed. So there's that. Yeah, Carl says eStart is wonderful. So is backup kick. Yeah, I'm with you, Carl. But Carl, you and we've just got to get off. Like, we're not at this point, we're just wasting energy. And that's kind of how I felt the last while talking about the backup kickstarts. And I've just got to get over it. I've got to just get over it because there's nothing I can do. And all I'm doing is yeah. Vernon Jardine says, missed most of this. Can we restart? You can watch it. You can watch it once it's posted. Any plan? So Tavin says, any plans for a GPX motorbike? No, I do not have any plans for that. Not touching that with a 200-foot pole. Let's see. Chase Jepson. I've been riding 450s over 15 years for single track, and I just sold one and got my first 300. I hope I made the right decision. Haven't been out on it waiting on some bearings. Chase, you did make the right decision. I can tell you unequivocally you made the right decision. Even if you just got, it's good to, like you said, you've been riding 450s for 15 years. I think you should have switched a long time ago. And that doesn't mean that the 450s are bad. I just think it's good to kind of like change models and change displacements and things a lot more often than every 15 years. Richard says, why is EFI heavier than the carbs? Because you have to have additional things. Like the throttle body is about the same amount of weight as a carburetor, but then you have to have computers and modules and some different things there. So they're always going to be a little bit heavier than carburetors because it's you've got electronics and stuff. You've got a slightly more, and you have to have some sensors and some different things. Ultimately, though, I would rather have an EFI bike than a carburetor bike. Serious. I understand that it's a little bit more complex, but especially where I'm changing elevations all the time and I'm setting up a lot of bikes, it saves me so much time to not have to tune every bike because it takes an hour, 2 hours initially to get a bike tuned. It's tedious. And then if you change elevations and one week you're going to be riding at 10,000 feet, and then 2 weeks later you're going to be riding at 3,000 feet, it's a pain in the A. And having them fuel injected has been good for me. Josh Owens, do you think KTM would voluntarily choose TPI over a carb if it wasn't for emission mandates? No, I don't, Josh. I don't. I believe, from what I've been told, the only reason that we have these injected 2-strokes is because of emission regulations. Oh, Dale Malone says, just a suggestion to add super chat to future live feeds so we can send you money. Dale, that's really nice of you. I haven't even looked into that. If the best thing you can do, Dale, is just use my links to Rocky Mountain ATV. When you're buying parts, they're listed usually in the video descriptions here, or they're listed at my website. And I feel really good about that value exchange because it's not costing you anything. Rocky Mountain ATV picks up the tab there, but you can always donate on PayPal. You go to my website, you can make a donation, PayPal, Patreon. But thanks for, you make me emotional here, Dale, because money is tight. Money is always tight, especially with what I've got going on in my personal life. Yeah, Brandon Bladen says KTM had to comply with Euro laws. Without that, they'd still have carbs, but they're probably going to do this way eventually because they are very innovative. Brandon, that's probably a better answer than what I gave. Yeah, they had to comply because of Euro standards in Europe. And there's a bunch of green sticker, red sticker BS going on in California. But eventually they probably would kind of do this because there's a ton of people that never got into 2-strokes because they were too scared of jetting and mixing fuel, so or mixing oil in the fuel. D Fish says, also very interesting to see a 300SX come into play as well. Kind of cool to add one more bike to the list. And it was easy because D Fish, there was nothing different as far as parts wise. There's nothing different between a 250SX and a 300SX other than a different cylinder and piston. At least I think. Maybe the crank is different, but it probably isn't. Everything else is the same. And so it's easy to come out. And they already had the 300XC and the 250XC. So why not have the 300SX? It just makes sense. Yeah, Carl says, wise decision on the GPX bikes. I get the GPX bike. It's a Chinese bike, and I get lambasted every time I do anything that is connected with China. Like I got ripped. I got skewered by just saying, hey, look, here's this pipe. I did a review on a pipe that is a Chinese made pipe, and people lost their shiz on me. And I'm like, bro, see this? See the phone that's in your pocket and the screen that you're watching this on, the computer that you're doing, and your TV and your big screen and your medication and all this stuff. Guess what? Made in China. The shirt that you're wearing, the shoes that you're wearing, it's made in China. Like everything is made in China. But if I review something where it's like people know it's made in China, they lose their shiz. So no, I'm not going to review a GPX bike because it's made in China. And there's too many people that are high up on the hog and want to like holier, like be like, oh, I don't even know. But anyway, I shouldn't talk about it because look, I love you guys and most of you guys are great, but it's just frustrating if there's a double standard. Like I can't review something because it has some connection with China, but literally everything else in your house and everything else like in your pocket and everything is made in China. But yet you're going to like, anyway, I'll get off that. But that's how I feel. So we've been going for 50 minutes here. I think it's probably pretty good. Yeah, you can tell I get kind of worked up sometimes. I just get worked up when people are, there's a little bit of hypocrisy with the whole, and like, look, I love made in USA. I'm drinking a drink right here that's made in, well, I don't know if this is Yeti, but the stuff that's in here is made in USA. And I'm all about supporting USA. I'm a patriot. I want us to do well. I want more things to come to the USA. But that was really frustrating to me because I've bought literally 100 FMF pipes. Literally 100, maybe more between the silencers and the pipes and everything. I've got FMF pipes all over the place, FMF silencers. I've reviewed them several times. I do one video on that Lex Duraflow pipe. You wouldn't believe my inbox. You look through the comment feed and you look at my inbox of like just people pissed off. I can't believe you did something. You reviewed something from China. So no, I'm not planning on reviewing a Chinese dirt bike. I'm also uncomfortable with the ethics of it because where there's smoke, there's fire. A lot of the stuff, Yamaha, Honda, KTM, a lot of their parts are manufactured in China, newsflash, and then they go to somewhere else and they assemble them. And so we get to say made in Austria or made in Japan or made in America. But the actual components were formed or cast in many, many cases in China. But people just want to gloss over that. The medication, the ibuprofen you're taking, the aspirin you're taking, made in China. Okay, I think that's good. There's a ton of stuff to love about these bikes, these new 2023 models. There's also some things where we're just going to be like, we're just going to have to wait and see. Ultimately, I would take the 6-speed transmission over all these other changes. At least I think. I mean, I would, if it were up to me, I would have said, hey, you're doing a bunch of cool stuff, but you're taking away the thing that I love the very most about your entire line. Well, I love the counterbalance 2-stroke is amazing. So the counterbalance 2-stroke that they have, the 250 and the 300, that's the thing that I think that sets them above and beyond all the other manufacturers. But the next thing that I loved the most was the XC transmission. XC semi-close ratio transmission. It didn't exist anywhere else with any other brand. And unfortunately, it's going away. That's the wrong move, KTM. But I will say you've changed a bunch of other stuff. And so we'll just have to see. And maybe the net result of all these other changes will change my mind. But KTM, you're on the clock. You have to change my mind. Not that you care. You don't care. But at least I care and some of my viewers care. And so I want you to change my mind. Are all these other changes, all these other things, some of them are positive, some of them are like, I don't know. Are all these other things enough to get me to get off my soapbox about losing the 6-speed close ratio transmission? I don't know. We're going to find out. But we'll have to wait until like October at least before my 250 XC will arrive. So anyway, that's what I got going for you. If you want to support Dirt Bike Channel, please use the links down in the video description for Rocky Mountain ATV, or you can go to my website, dirtbikechannel.com. I will be doing a sweepstakes in June, starting here in about 3 weeks or so, where we will be giving away the Honda 450 RX and the 250 RX. Both of them are going to be given away. Oh, just by the way, probably no one's going to see this because we're an hour into this. But my 65 SX, which was it was like the runner-up prize for the March sweepstakes. George in Connecticut decided to do just a cash prize because we were going back and forth, and it was like, literally, I was going to ship the bike across the country to Connecticut, and all that energy and time and fuel and everything. And then what was he going to do? He was probably just going to sell it because he didn't have any use for it. And I didn't see a whole lot. I just didn't want to waste the resources to have that happen. So I sent him a $4,000 check, which he told me he got today. And he's going to go to the bank tomorrow and take a picture with a DBC shirt on, holding his $4,000 in cash. And that's what I'm going to put up on the website for that, because it just didn't make sense to ship the bike all the way across the country so that he can sell it in Connecticut. So I'm going to sell that here. So if you have an interest in a 65 SX, it's got Electron carburetor on it, send me an email. The best way to get a hold of me is kyle@dirtbikechannel.com. Yeah, I'm just going to sell it as is, and you guys somebody can, hopefully it goes to a good home. So thank you so much. Sorry, I got a little bit pissed off there about the Chinese thing. It's been something that's just dug into me because I get it. I get it all the time. People are like, oh, this is made in China. How come you touched it? I'm like, you try not touching anything that's made in China. Really dig in. And if you're that righteous, try to not touch something that's made in China. You'll probably starve to death. And you won't have any clothes, So anyway, yeah. Made in America. I love it. Let's make America strong. Let's have a strong country, and let's get along. Let's find out a way. Let's figure out a way to get along. Let's stop being so divided. I love you. You love me. You're like red, blue, purple, whatever. I don't care. Let's just figure out a way to unify. We get nothing done. We get nothing done if we're divided. Division is not helping us at all. I don't know if you're listening, America, but division and anger and hate is not helping us, especially not inside the country. This isn't a political program. I'm just saying, like, division isn't helping us. Okay. I better stop, man. Okay. Here we go. Leave a single track. Thanks so much. If you have questions, email me, kyle@dirtbikechannel.com, and hope you have a good day. Thanks.